Today, we're diving into the life of Theodore Teddy Roosevelt, a president who didn't just occupy the White House, he absolutely charged into it. When he took office back in 1901, he was this total force of nature who believed the presidency wasn't some desk job, but an arena for getting things done. And this quote right here, it is the key to understanding everything about him. For Roosevelt, life was not a spectator sport. He believed the real credit, the real honor belonged to the people who were willing to jump in, get their hands dirty, and really strive for something great. This idea of being the man in the arena wasn't just a motto for him. It was the blueprint for his entire life, from the battlefield to the Oval Office. So, to really get a handle on his legacy, we're going to break it down into four main parts. First, we'll look at the man himself, a true force of nature. Then, we'll step into his domestic arena to understand his square deal. After that, we'll see how he used America's big stick on the world stage. And finally, we'll wrap up with the incredible green legacy he left behind for all of us. Okay, let's start with the man. Because to really get Roosevelt, you have to understand his personal story, which is honestly just as remarkable as his presidency. You know, it's kind of hard to believe, but that energetic, tough-as-nails president we all have in our heads, he actually started out as a really frail, sickly kid. He had terrible asthma, but he just flat-out refused to let it define him. Instead, he threw himself into what he famously called the strenuous life, building up his body and his mind through just sheer willpower. That early fight really forged the determination that would define his entire life. And his political career took off at that same breakneck speed. He burst onto the national scene as a war hero, leading the Rough Riders. Then, in what felt like a flash, he's the governor of New York, and then vice president. And then, tragedy strikes. After President McKinley was assassinated in 1901, Theodore Roosevelt was suddenly the president. And yet this, he was only 42. The youngest person to ever hold that office. So when you put all of that together, you get this truly larger-than-life persona. He wasn't just a politician. He was an adventurer, an author, a soldier, and he deeply, deeply believed in public service. All that energy and charisma made him incredibly popular with the American people. They really saw him as a new kind of leader for a brand new century. So how does a force of nature like that actually govern? Well, let's step into the domestic arena and look at his signature policy, which he called the square deal. The whole philosophy behind the square deal was simple, but really powerful. The government's job is to make sure things are fair. Roosevelt believed he had to protect regular people from the massive corporate interests that were running the show back then. It was all about making sure every single American got a fair shot. And he framed all this with three main goals, famously known as the 3 C's. That's control of corporations, consumer protection, and the conservation of natural resources. We're going to dig into the first two right now, and trust me, we'll see just how huge that third one was in a little bit. First up, controlling corporations. This is where he got that famous nickname, the Trust Buster. See, at the time, huge monopolies or trusts in things like railroads and oil had an insane amount of power. Roosevelt went right after them, arguing that they were killing competition and hurting everyday people. For a president to directly challenge big business like this, it was absolutely revolutionary, a total game changer. And second, protecting consumers. After these horrifying reports came out about the food industry, Roosevelt pushed for some major new laws. The Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act were huge deals. For the very first time, they set up federal standards for the safety and quality of American products. So, Roosevelt was totally transforming America at home, but he also had his eyes on the rest of the world. He believed America had a new role to play on the global stage, and he had a very, very specific idea of how to play it. This quote is just as famous as "the man in the arena," and it perfectly captures his whole approach to foreign policy. It was a strategy of careful, quiet diplomacy that was always backed up by undeniable military power. The strategy really had two sides to it. Speaking softly meant you always tried diplomacy and negotiation first. You tried to work things out peacefully. But the big stick, well, that was the power of the U.S. Navy, a very real and credible threat of force that made other countries pay attention. For Roosevelt, you couldn't have real diplomacy unless you had real strength to back it up. And boy, did this policy get results. He was a key force behind the construction of the Panama Canal, a project that completely reshaped global trade. But it wasn't just about force.
He also managed to successfully mediate the war between Russia and Japan, an achievement so incredible that it earned him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1906.
Okay, for our final section, let's turn to what might have been Roosevelt's most personal passion, and a legacy that all of us can still see and touch today: his work in conservation.
You see, for Roosevelt, this wasn't just another policy. It was deeply, deeply personal. He was a lifelong hunter, an explorer, a naturalist. He had seen the incredible beauty of the American wilderness with his own two eyes, and he was absolutely horrified to see it being destroyed. He felt it was his moral duty to protect it.
And so he used the power of the presidency to act on a scale that was just unheard of. How unheard of? Well, during his time in office, Roosevelt protected or created over 224 separate natural areas across the country. The sheer scale of it is just staggering. And that number includes over 150 national forests, 51 federal bird reserves, and 18 national monuments. He used the brand new Antiquities Act to protect amazing places like the Grand Canyon. He wasn't just saving land, he was literally building the foundation of America's entire conservation movement. In the end, we're talking about millions upon millions of acres that were set aside. And this wasn't just about saving some pretty views for him. For Roosevelt, it was a moral obligation to make sure that the natural wonders of America would still be here for his kids and for all of us. So, when you put it all together, the trustbuster, the Nobel Prize winner, the great conservationist, you see a presidency that was defined by one word: action. Theodore Roosevelt fundamentally changed the relationship between the government and its people, and between America and the rest of the world. His time in the arena really proved that one person with enough will and vision could be a powerful catalyst for progress and change. And that leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. In our world today, what is the most important role for a president to play?